There is one thing I wanted to discuss with you briefly about a rumor that was circulating. Honestly, someone sent it to me, so I don't really know if it was circulating that much, but it's worthy of discussion nonetheless. So supposedly they spotted a black Targaryen flag on set. Now, of course, for those of you who don't know, because I know there are some people in the audience who haven't read the books, the two factions in House of the Dragon Civil War are the Greens and the Black faction. Now, it's just rather unfortunate that, the Black faction is Rhaenyra's faction, and, yeah. And the reason that...
And in the show, it's filled with black people, and so now it's like...
it's just in the books
that when you say the blacks, it's now like literally the blacks. It's weird. There's no
way around it. What are you gonna do? But the reason this is somewhat credible is because if you don't recall, in episode 10 of the last season, the last episode, when Otto Hightower is coming down to Dragonstone to present terms to Rhaenyra's group, I remember one of the guards comes out of nowhere and tells them, there's a envoy from King's Landing. It's flying a green Targaryen sigil. Because, the Greens. So, it's possible that they're not going to use the actual sigil for Rhaenyra's group from the books, which is...
It's messy. It's quartered, yeah. It's a banner quartered with the upper left quadrant and the lower right quadrant being the Targaryen sigil, the upper right quadrant being the Arryn sigil for Rhaenyra's mother, the lower left being the Velaryon sigil for Laenor's family.
I wouldn't say messy, I would say busy.
It's busy, yeah, it's definitely busy.
So,
it's one of those situations where, I would totally accept and be fine with them changing her
Really?
sigil.
You wouldn't have a problem with it?
I wouldn't. In fact, if her sigil were just... I think if her sigil were quartered Targaryens, Velaryons, it would make a lot more sense. That her Arryn quartering, yes, it's her mother. Her mother was half Arryn. It gets a little distant to her, and the Arryns, they do join Rhaenyra's side in the end. They do, but it's just they're not as significant to the story as the Velaryons.
Do you think some people would be confused because, once again, I don't think anyone remembers that... Well, casual fans, and remember, just to remind the audience, casual fans are majority of the audience for House of the Dragon. I don't think casual fans remember that Rhaenyra is part Arryn, and because we probably will see the veil in the first episode of season 2, because was it Jace? Yes. Jace has to go there.
Jace does a visit,
and then he goes to Winterfell. So if we did use that original flag, people are going to think, oh, House Arryn's sigil is there because they're allies. Then where's the Stark sigil? Why isn't it on the banner too? Because they're also allies and arguably way more important than House Arryn.
Yes. I think it's one of those if you're into Ice and Fire and you like the houses and you're getting into the technical aspects of people's heritage and things like that, it makes sense. But in the show where House Arryn is not really a huge character, it's taking up a lot of real estate on a banner.
I agree with you on that, but at the same time, this is also the show who did not give a single fuck about character names. Remember that thing you told me about with Comic Book Girl 19, her complaints about how there's 2 Viserys and
the fact that we have a Rhaenyra, a Rhaenys, a Rhaena, it's just,
No, so I get it. On one hand, I understand, they're going to make it simplistic for the casuals, but on the other hand, they don't really have to, because let's be honest, either the casuals get on board and they like it, or they don't pay attention, or they don't care. So Ryan Condal has shown.
That's the thing, is in the end it's a banner. Do casuals really even care about the banners?
True. Ryan Condal has shown us that he is more than willing to show some love to book fans. So
yeah, absolutely. Ryan Condal's he's interesting because he shows love to book fans, and then he's also very bold, and it's just like, we're not going with that. We're doing this, and you're like,
what
okay.
do you mean? Like, what? Give me an example of that one.
You know, well, Daemon killing.
Oh, there,
his wife.
yeah.
You know that kind of stuff. Aging down Alicent so that she and Rhaenyra are the same age. Big structural changes. Making the Velaryons black. Like big structural changes. Sometimes it works out really well. I think the switching to the Velaryons being black worked out really well in the end. And while some of them, like, I don't think necessarily work. I don't think Daemon killing his wife worked, but it's hit and miss. But I'll grant that Ryan Condal is a bold one. He's a bold one.
Honestly, I still think it's funny. Even if he didn't make Alicent and Rhaenyra the same age, even if they made like Alicent older and Rhaenyra younger, I still think the evil stepmom thing would have still hit home with a lot of people. But it would have made Alicent somewhat less sympathetic. Actually, no, not really. If you show the scenes of her like doing her duty and not being cool with it, and like having that like look on her face when Viserys is on top of her, like you could still have her be like the douchey stepmother and still be sympathetic because of all the crap she's going through. Like you could still do it, but it's a good choice nonetheless to make them the same age.
Well, I see Twitter wars between like literal black and green supporters, which I think is kind of funny.
You don't know the half of it, by the way. You really don't.
I know. But I think most book fans are gonna be black supporters. I think it's like going based on the books, it's very difficult to side with the greens. The blacks do their evil, but it's very difficult to side with the greens. And so I think if you're just watching the show, the greens are a bit more sympathetic than what's presented in Fire and Blood, which is funny because Fire and Blood is supposed to be green propaganda, and yet like anyone with any ability to read between the lines knows that the greens are horrible. So it's kind of funny, I
kind of like that, like when they go out of their way to make both sides sympathetic, but at the same time show like an equal amount of evil on both sides, and try to like for example in the books, like Aemon killing Luke, like that's like, you get the sense that he did that because he was a douche, and he was a piece of shit, and he was an evil person, and he's a villain, blah, blah, blah. But in the show, they changed it up a bit, which I like.
He didn't rip out Luke's eyes and bring them back to Baratheon's daughter to show him off, like in the books.
We haven't seen the pilot episode. Yeah, he could still go back and do that. Like, you don't know, but still. But no, like, I kind of like that they do that, where they, both sides have their supporters instead of it being a one-sided affair.
It's funny. I remember I was in graduate school, and I had a professor we were talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the professor brought up the fact that there was this recent poll about which side in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict do you sympathize with, and the choices were the Israelis, the Palestinians, or neither. And they had like the split, like most like 30% of Americans sympathize with the Israeli side, like 10% sympathize with the Palestinian side, and 60% sympathize with neither, And what's funny is the professor said after that, he's like, it's too bad they didn't ask them like my choice, which is I sympathize with both. I was like, oh, it was like, oh, clever, or like, it's true. Like when you set the question up like that, I think George R.R. Martin is like writes Fire and Blood for us to sympathize with neither. You're maybe going to sympathize with the blacks, but you're probably going to sympathize with neither. Ryan Condal is doing a show where you're trying to sympathize with both.